Well, wonderful. Thank you all and welcome to Rainmaker's all-inclusive sort of discussion, webinar, call it what you will, on transcending boundaries in women's sports. And the focus really is to navigate inclusion. How are we doing it in this specific context of women's sports? And sort of joining me today are two very, very esteemed panelists. I think both of them need no introduction, but I will still nevertheless introduce both our panelist speakers. Gaurav Kalra. So first speaker is Gaurav Kalra. You can see him on your screen. Gaurav Kalra is a stalwart in sports journalism. He's had an illustrious career spanning over 2 decades, and his journey traverses across prestigious platforms, commencing with groundbreaking roles in broadcast and digital media. As the Vice President Current Affairs at Viacom 18 Media Private Limited, Gaurav spearheads editorial content for Sports 18 Network and JioCinema, amplifying storytelling in broadcast, television, and digital spheres. His tenure at Reliance Foundation as head of communications sports witnessed him crafting communication strategies for India's largest grassroots corporate sports support program. So, with a skill set encompassing broadcast television, digital media, corporate communications, and an indelible footprint in sports coverage, Gaurav is a luminary in reshaping sports journalism and content strategy. We're actually thrilled and delighted to have Gaurav join us as a speaker for the Rainmaker All-Inclusive webinar. And we really look forward to a very engaging discussion. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from Gaurav's and Maira's sort of viewpoints and what they share with us today. Thank you, Gaurav, for joining us. Delighted to have you here with us.
My pleasure.
Our second panelist is Maira Q. Maira is an ardent advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, embodying her commitment through roles that foster an inclusive environment. As the lead for diversity, equity, and inclusion at Godrej Capital, she champions a culture where every individual feels valued, focusing on empowering cis women, transgender individuals, and people with disabilities. Her tenure as DEI consultant at Population Services International involved driving transformative change for the LGBTQIA+ community through the Samagra project. Analyzing recruitment practices, supporting entrepreneurs, and advocating for inclusive healthcare policies, Maira demonstrated her dedication to creating equitable environments. I think, Maira, you will find that today's discussion will have a lot of focus on some of that.
Yeah.
As a DEI evangelist at Spectrum of Inclusion and a diversity and inclusion consultant in various capacities, she honed her expertise in leadership development and team management. Her commitment extended to volunteering at the All India Queer Association, reinforcing a passion for societal inclusion. With a rich background in human resources consulting and a spectrum of skills in team management and learning and development, Maira remains steadfast in her mission to foster diverse and inclusive workplaces. We are honored to have Maira join us as a speaker for today's all-inclusive webinar, Navigating Inclusion, Transcending Boundaries in Women's Sports. Maira, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm confident that we'll have, a discussion that will be rich and that will be a tremendous learning for all of us, who are listening in, participating, and I'm really sort of looking forward to this discussion as it plays out during the course of the next hour or so. So thank you once again for joining us. Thank you, Maira. Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Antony, and thank you for doing this webinar on a very important topic of inclusion of the transgender folks in not just in the workplace but in sports as well. Because for some people, it's work.
Absolutely, and you're right. I mean, it is something that I think the time is right for us to talk about inclusion in sports and how it can be, how we can all make it a conversation that can lead to greater sensitization and greater acceptance. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Thank you so much for joining.
Okay.
All right. So without further ado, we can get started. Now, before we get into sort of the meat or the substance of our webinar today or our discussion today, just want to take a couple of minutes to quickly take you through why the topic has, why this issue has sort of become such a major talking point over the last few years, right? In very recent times, the ICC or the International Cricket Council has banned transgender players from women's international cricket. And what they have done, well, the ban works in the following way. What they have done is any trans woman who has transitioned post puberty then cannot play women's cricket. So the ICC in a statement has said inclusivity is incredibly important to us as a sport, but our priority was to protect the integrity of the international women's game and the safety of players. Right. So this is where we are with respect to women's cricket and what the ICC's current position is. I think the most impacted by the ICC's decision was Danielle McGahey, trans woman playing for Canada. And Danielle has said that I promise I will not stop fighting for equality for us in sport. We deserve the right to play cricket at the highest level. We are not a threat to the integrity or safety of the sport. Never stop fighting. Right. So that's Danielle. That's what she had to say. Another trans woman athlete or sports person, Francesca Needham. She had to withdraw from the South Yorkshire-based Rosington Main Ladies for the foreseeable future after opponents refused to play over alleged safety concerns. The boycott is said to have followed a player suffering a broken knee when blocking a shot from Francesca. Right. So that's again. So the as you can see, this is not just limited to cricket. It is something that is sort of now something that's talked about across all different types of sports. American Samoa soccer player Jaya Sayula was the world's first transgender national soccer player to compete in a men's FIFA World Cup qualifying match in 2011. Jaya has said that a million transgender women can be visible in their societies, and it truly helps when those women are well known. Our well known change comes from society members who do not understand or tolerate. They are the target. Now, moving a little sort of into a domain which is sort of maybe at some level parallel, a discussion that is going in parallel to the trans athletes, is also with respect to players or athletes like Duti Chand, right? Duti Chand, India's ace sprinter, was accused of being a man for failing the hyperandrogenism, which is the male testosterone test, and was later subjected to a gender verification test by the Indian National Athletics Federation. She's gone through a number of different, sort of challenging times, and ultimately had to take up this matter on appeal to CAS, which is the sort of the apex body for sport, the apex body that decides on all issues related to sport, and won the matter on appeal. But the controversy is far from over, and in a similar situation as Duti, we have again an athlete from South Africa, Caster Semenya, who has currently, as the current regulations, World Athletics regulations stand, has been banned from the 400, 800, and 1500 meters because the Athletics Federation believes that Caster Semenya and sort of athletes like her who are DSD or intersex athletes as they're also called, where there's been development challenges, have been are seen as having an undue advantage because of elevated testosterone levels, and therefore that gives them an advantage, but only in this particular area of 400, 800, and 1500 meters, right? So as you can see, it doesn't feel like, or it doesn't seem like there is absolute clarity. Different sports bodies are sort of coming up with regulations as they deem fit, or as they in their belief after having conducted research, surveys, spoken to different experts, and so on and so forth. So the jury really is, in a manner of speaking, still out on all of these aspects of, particularly with respect to women's sports. Now, so without further ado, I would like to now sort of get into the sort of discussion with Gaurav and Maira. And Gaurav, I'd like to sort of kick this off with you. Inclusion in sport, right? Everybody agrees that inclusion is necessary, and it is something that is 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 the way forward, or is the future in many senses, right? Nobody says that we don't want a non-inclusive world. But at the same time, where does inclusion meet equity, meet fairness? Because uh, on one hand, we ask for greater inclusion and we want all categories of athletes to participate together. On the other hand, there is pushback, ostensibly from the cis women athletes, who feel that it is actually not a level playing field. So from an equity perspective, they are arguing that it is actually not equitable or fair, right? Um, if you could just share your, sort of your take on this whole debate that's sort of consuming social media and wherever else you see, because sport is something that touches all of us, right? And it is a very integral part of life as we know it. So, what are your thoughts? What are your preliminary thoughts on this?
Yes, Anthony, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I really feel it's a privilege to be able to speak with someone like Myra. I think sometimes when you frame this as a debate, you almost have this imaginary news feeling, news channel feeling, where two people are going loggerheads with each other. But I think this is a teachable moment for all of us as well, where lived experiences such as the one Myra had will further enhance our understanding of this subject. And I think it's very important to just elaborate, Antony, on two aspects. One, that I think the science is evolving. It's something that's fairly agreed by everyone who is a stakeholder in this conversation, as a participant, as an observer, as someone who's maybe running the sport. So the science is still evolving. I don't think the definite answers have come in here. So it's very important how we frame the argument, and it's important to realize that yes, this is, while a human rights issue, that everybody deserves a level and equitable playing field. You have to hear the voices of the female athletes who have vehemently, in some cases, and quite strongly in others, made the case that the inclusion of transgender athletes have made theirs a non-level playing field. I think Riley Gaines is one American swimmer who's been known to have made a very compelling argument, has gone in front of Congress as well in the US and made that argument. I think we'll discuss the nub of it. I'm glad you brought up cricket later in the conversation. I do want to have a detailed conversation about cricket, but I think the most important point to make here is that there is a suggestion in the science, and I'm happy to hear what Myra's view on this is, that that it's pointing in the direction that that athletes, transgender athletes who've gone through male puberty, have been through that process of male puberty and then transitioned and then transitioned, have inherently retained the advantages of male puberty that help them in women's sport. And I just want to make one other argument here, Anthony. There is a reason why the category of female sport exists. The reason is that otherwise you could have like the category of open sport. Everybody plays tennis together, cricket together, runs together, jumps together, throws together. But the reason why it's done is that the two genders are fundamentally different to each other when it comes to things such as sprinting power, explosive power, such as strength, such as energy, endurance, etc., etc. And I think that's established. That is the reason why female sport exists as a separate category. And all athletes that are going through the process of male puberty are believed to retain those inherent advantages as female athletes, and hence create a scenario in which the level playing field is impacted. The whole conversation around, I think, the Riley Gaines issue comes from a swimmer in America called Leah Thomas, who is who competed in the male category for years altogether and was really well below the pecking order. But as soon as she transitioned to the female category, she started smashing records and beating everyone. So I think the additional filter that we need to add to this conversation, and it's something that I would like to hear Maira's view on as well, is that the female athletic community has pushed back quite vigorously on this, and that is why the need for a robust debate before these decisions are made. And I'm sure that we'll talk about individual instances such as the one you brought up in your introduction, but that would be my initial submission.
Thanks, Gaurav. Which is, I mean, I think you've really summed up the nub of the issue, or really uh, what is the primary concern of cis women athletes and those who manage sport in that sense, right? The decision makers at the highest level of international sport, and this is repeatedly coming out as the primary area of concern, that there is an undue advantage that trans women athletes have over cis women athletes. So thank you for your thoughts, Myra. Your take on this. I mean, it's sport is an area where the physical attributes do matter, right? And as Gaurav said, there is a reason why sport is excuse me, sport is categorized into men's and women's categories. Uh, what are your thoughts in terms of the whole controversy, and where and from especially from an inclusion and an equity and a fairness perspective?
So, thanks, Anthony. And I think, like more than controversy, I think I see it as an opportunity where we can have more dialogues and understand like how we can create an equitable opportunity for everyone. Today, we are talking about inclusion of a transgender women in sports. But if you see the society at large, India or global, there are a lot of people, especially Gen Zs, they are going on a road of non-binary. They, a lot of them are using they and them as a pronoun. So, just like a workplace, our office structures, our sports also needs to be evolved in that direction. Having said that, any step, any decision that you take should have an element of fairness and justice. When you came up with this idea of banning transgender folks, especially transgender women from cricket, and there are a lot of bodies who has taken the same route in past, it does not show any intent or anything of inclusion towards transgender folks. You are building the gates, you are building the walls, but you're not building bridges. You're not thinking in a direction, okay, physical attributes are different, this could be challenging, but how uh, as you said, like sports is a very integral part of humanity, of human race. How we can provide opportunity for everyone. Even in India, if you see, sports is not just it's not just for a passion. There are a lot of folks who plays cricket, could be a Ranji or anything, to get a government job, and it's a wonderful a source of living as well. So you are creating a divide. You are stopping a certain population to participate in this form of economic livelihood, and having such structures and policy, it will make things worse. Now we talk about transition. They say people who have gone through a male puberty, like they have a different structures, different body structures, different muscle mass, testosterone level, and everything. Now we talk. Let's get to the basic thing. How many people have excess of gender transition when they are in their teens, like in 14 or 15? How many of the parents understand what does gender means and what this spectrum means? People, and what is our existing healthcare infrastructure? is it easy to get this like letter of support from a psychologist? Is our does our society is accepting? So people have to transition at a very later stage of their life, not because they want to, but because they can't in their early stage of life. And hence, this decision will affect a lot of people. Now, talking about like transgender women having unfair advantage on people, I think that's unfair to say that because no two people have the same body type, the same stamina, and it requires years of practice to be at that level. So I think we should focus on how we can build bridge for all the people, for trans women, for non-binary folks, for intersex women, and rather than building walls for marginalized communities.
Very, very good points, Myra. And I mean, I like the way you framed it, right? Don't build walls, figure out ways in which you can actually be more inclusive. Before we move to Gaurav, I just wanted to kind of, sort of, that one point that repeatedly comes up, right? Do trans women have an advantage over cis women when it comes to physical attributes? And I fully get your point that many trans women actually transition post puberty for a variety of reasons, including probably legal as well, right? I
Yeah,
doubt if, especially in India, I don't think you can go for a, reassignment surgery as a minor. You will have to go as somebody who's above the age of 18 who can take their own decisions, right? So for a variety of reasons, including family pressure and so on and so forth, I fully get that argument that most of us cannot transition, before puberty. But having said that, the is there, and this is where I'd love to hear your and Gaurav's views on this, on science, right? Where are we on science? Is it actually proven that trans women who transition post puberty actually have an advantage over cis women? Muscle mass, bone density, endurance, lung capacity, strength, power, all of those things that have already been, are now part of who you are as a human being, right?
yeah,
So I'd love to hear from you, and after that from Gaurav, on specifically this issue. Is Where is science on this? And I fully appreciate that none of us are scientists, doctors, experts,
yeah,
etc. Fair enough. But to the extent of,
yeah.
that you can share with us your views on this.
So it's very unfortunate for cis women and for trans women both. There have been very less study has done in terms of healthcare. If you see what is the procedure of like HRT, so there is a no medicine for trans women for the HRT. We have to take medicine like estrogen, which is prescribed to cis women. So we are taking that, and same for cis women as well. There have been very less research and very less like funding has been provided uh, to understand us health of a cis women and for a trans women. So again, there is no study. Some of the scientists are the opinion is divided. Some people say that trans women have some advantage on a cis women when it's come to the physical attributes, and some study says that there is no concrete evidence or data for it. There's no study for it because when we start the HRT, and if I talk about my personal experience, I transitioned quite late in my in my life. So the way I was able to pick things before HRT, I'm not able to do it, and my muscle mass has decreased, my stamina has decreased, and all these things has happened post HRT, and and this does happen for like this is a fact. Like if you ask any trans person, any trans women, who has gone through HRT or gender forming surgery, uh, their capacity of lifting, their strength has been decreased. So this is for a fact, but it's very unfortunate. We don't have any research. We just have a couple of examples that this swimmer has done this or this cricketer player has done that. But it's a very, very rare examples which is there. You don't find it very often, like how like it's not like the whole transgender women are leading all the women's sports in everywhere. It's just couple of examples which we take. So and it could be like that must we cannot like ignore the fact that whatever they have done, they have done it because of years of practice. I will be able to maybe do way better than when I started my HRT, but it can only happen when I work on myself, work on my strength. I follow particular diet and everything. So so yeah, like the bottom line is there is no much research is there. There is very few data points which are available, very few scientists which are who are talking about it and doing some work on it. And definitely it's like there is evidence, there is things that muscle mass strength does decrease post HRT. It does not remain same as before HRT.
Understood, Myra. Thank you so much. And just for some of our viewers who may not know what HRT is, that is
Okay.
hormone replacement therapy. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah, it is
Where
correct. Yeah,
estrogen
please go ahead.
levels are increased through medication and testosterone levels significantly go down.
Yeah, yeah. So you take testosterone blocker, you take artificial estrogen because your body cannot produce it naturally. So
Naturally.
you take those medicines and again like as I said like we are living in a non-binary world. There was a time when we used to say male to female or female to male. Now it's just a gender transition. There is no such a rule book, no such a guideline that you have to do these things to be called as a trans person. So it's up to person, to everyone, like however they want to feel. It's just like any other like regular treatment is to make yourself feel better.
Understood. And thank you so much for providing that clarity. So, from a science perspective, Gaurav, we have the lived experience of Myra, right? Where she says that there is a significant decrease in muscle mass, strength, stamina, and she has experienced it herself during the course of her transition. And therefore, as a person who has actually gone through that process, Myra's view is that once you have transitioned, no matter what age, and Myra, correct me if I'm sort of articulating your thoughts correctly. Once you have transitioned, no matter what the age, there is a significant loss in all of these factors that are very important, especially from a sports person's perspective, right? So
Yeah.
while science is the jury's out on what the scientific sort of version is, or is there no there doesn't seem to be any authoritative evidence one way or the other. But we have Myra's view here very clearly that says that as a person who has gone through this, I can tell you that it is, there's a big difference pre and post transition.
Yes, and I think obviously you would be silly to ignore lived experiences, because lived experiences are what form the basis of all scientific inquiry as it goes forward. But I think, Anthony, it's also important to remember the other thing that Myra said, which is that there is very limited science available on this right now, and even all of the scientists that or all of the and again, I think it's important to qualify this by saying that none of us have the understanding, or at least you and I don't have the level of understanding of the science behind this as, say, someone like Myra does. And of course, this is a evolving area as well. But I think what we are seeing from lived experiences as well in the athletes that have transitioned and gone on to compete, we are seeing very significant performances by transgender athletes that give you a sense that they are way superior to the female athletes, to the other female athletes that they join when in that field. I think we talked about the experience of Leah Thomas, who is of course has become almost like the poster person of this entire conversation. But we've had instances of cyclists who've come in and competed at state level in various competitions in the US and have absolutely decimated the female field. It's happened also in the case of an MMA athlete. And the worrying thing with the contact sports is that the power differential is so high that it could cause serious injury and harm in that case. Now, once again, these are anecdotal examples, and I concede Myra's point there that this is not, these are examples of what has happened in individual cases, and as a result of that, the whole argument cannot be framed. However, I think that has to be taken as, I think the argument made by female athletes and prominent female athletes is that it's almost a window into a future in which you might have, or at least that's the argument, a window into a future where you have several transgender athletes competing in the female category and absolutely dominating it. Antony, I think, we've had, and I know this is not a like for like comparison, but I think it holds well because there's been this conversation in tennis for many years about Serena Williams is the greatest tennis player of all time, but how would she do if she were to play at her peak against the 200th ranked man in the world? She would lose 6-love and 6-love in all probability. That has been and even Serena Williams in interviews has conceded that she will lose quite badly. Now, clearly that is losing badly to a man. To an athlete that has transitioned and is playing in the female category, what are the strengths that formerly male tennis player has retained while getting into the female category? That is the work in progress. And I think, Antony, it's important to hear the voices of female athletes that for the time being, in their lived experiences, when they compete against these athletes, they feel the gap. They feel the gulf between them and the transgender athletes. And as a result, the pushback is that this is not a level playing field. And this brings into question the integrity of female sport, or the or how whether female sport can remain as viable and entirely and as successful as an area of activity if there were to be more transgender athletes participating. I do not know the answer. However, I think the point I'm making, Antony, I just want to wrap this by saying the point I'm making here is that the voices of female athletes on this have been very strong, and those voices need to be heard when arriving at a final decision about whether about what to do with this situation.
Well, they're definitely at this point of time, their voices clearly are being heard, because I think in addition to cricket, you have rugby, swimming, athletics, all of whom have sort of clearly put down the rule that anybody who transitions post-puberty is ineligible to compete in the women's category as well. You articulated very well in terms of some of these instances like Leah Thomas's and others where they have successfully sort of they've been the success is tremendous in terms of they're really sort of leagues ahead of the competition in that sense. But for every Leah Thomas, don't you also have like let's say Laurel Hubbard, right, who transitioned well in her 30s and in a category such as weightlifting, right, where you can really demonstrate the power that may have been retained pre-transition to post-transition, right? Yet I don't believe Laurel Hubbard has won anything of significance in that sense. I believe she didn't even wasn't even on the podium at the Olympics, right, at the Tokyo Olympics. So therefore, are we taking isolated instances, right? Could we say a Leah Thomas? Could we compare her to only from the perspective that they're really good at what they do, to somebody like Serena, right? They're very, very good at what they do. It just so happens that they had, they have transitioned, but that's not the real reason why they're performing at that level. It's because they're really good and they have skills and anyway, post transition, a lot of your whatever you had, the skill might not ever go away, but definitely the physical attributes have significantly reduced. So are we taking isolated incidents and then sort of taking that to say that, oh, we can't it's not fair for trans women athletes to compete with cis women athletes?
Yeah, I think I did make that point. I think we are looking at the moment in the absence of definitive answers from science. We are looking at anecdotal evidence, and I think that's understood. There is that you will see instances of performances across various sporting disciplines, and as a result of that, you will draw conclusions. I think one of the points made by cisgender female athletes is that it is discriminatory to the extent that there are certain number of spots in a team, and if a transgender athlete comes in and outperforms female athletes or cisgender athletes, and as a result takes spots which they believe are rightfully theirs. I do want to make the point, illustration, just pick up on the argument you were making, Antony, on the basis of what the ICC has said, and you read out the statement at the beginning of our conversation, where they make the point about safety. Now, I think that it's important to contextualize that. What does it mean that we care about the safety of our athletes? Now, women's cricket for the last 7 or 8 years has really exploded into sort of into the limelight. It is now an extremely professional, highly skilled. It's always been highly skilled, but highly watched, really well followed international sport. And in India,
lot of money at stake as well now.
A lot of money at stake, more, 1,000 crore rights deal on the WPL, which is starting in a month's time. So I think it's quite clear that female cricket has made progress by leaps and bounds in the last 8 or 10 years. Now, but you have to understand is that men's cricket and women's cricket are significantly different in the areas that we've been talking about: explosive power, strength, the ability to hit the ball, the ability to, for instance, a fast bowler. And Antony, both of us have been cricket fans for all our young lives, and I don't know if Maira is, but we have been. And a fast bowler in men's cricket is considered fast when he's bowling at 140, 145 kilometers an hour. Now that's seriously good fast bowling, right? Fast bowler in women's cricket in the same categorization is about 120 kilometers per hour. At the recent auction to buy players for the WPL, the fastest bowler who was bought was at about 120 kilometers per hour. Now, that's a significant difference. You've played cricket, you know how different it is to even 5 kilometers of pace. I think the reason the ICC put in the word safety there, and ICC is really invested in women's cricket. They hold World Cups every year. They're hosting an under-19 World Cup. The reason they use safety is that there is a fear, and this is based again on anecdotal evidence from other sport. And again, I'm second guessing the ICC here, but there is a fear that what if an athlete transitions and plays women's cricket and then is significantly quicker than everyone else in that category and shows up the players that she is competing against now, but through the sheer ability, that sheer pace that she's able to bring to the ground. This is just one small illustration, and I'm only using it as a potential example to make the point about safety. It may be overblown and it may be overstated, but I think all sports bodies at the moment are waiting on the science to confirm to them to say that we do not see any retained advantages after transition in the execution of these skill sets. Because as soon as that happens, you threaten the viability of the entire category, is the argument, not mine. You threaten the viability of this entire section. And I think that is an argument we have to consider when we make this case. In the case of female sport, I think there is no question that there is a different human rights issue here, and on that we are all on the same page. However, when this issue comes in, when this filter is put in with regard to how this transition skill sets will actually play out in the real world, that's where I think we have the argument is to wait for the science to give you a definitive answer before you go down that path. And I think I see the merit in that argument to a large extent, as much as it's something that potentially denies some trans athletes the opportunity to compete in the female category.
Understood, Gaurav, and thank you for that. So, safety seems to be paramount. The word safety keeps coming up in, whatever it is that is put out by international sports bodies, ICC, World Athletics Federation. Two words that keep coming up that I've seen is our integrity and safety, right? To protect the integrity of women's sport and of course, naturally, safety of the athletes. Myra, your thoughts. I want to bring you in here because Gaurav has shared a lot with us in terms of why at this point of time, international federations have chosen, or many of them are choosing, as we speak, to sort of put in place guardrails against what they believe could jeopardize the integrity and safety of women's sport. Your thoughts?
Uh, so one thing is life of any trans person is not easy. So it's very unlikely that any cis men will will go through the HRT, will go through the second puberty again, have all the emotional roller coaster, will go through the bottom surgery, and will play
Only
a
play a
women's
sport.
career. Yeah, it's very unlikely, and I think that's in movies only this happened where Ayushmann Khurrana dress up as being a woman and doing all fun things, and there have been couple of other movies as well. That does not happen in real life. Being a trans person is very difficult in India. You don't get housing. You are subjected to of being bullied in on road, in market, in public places. I don't think so. Like any sane person will choose this life, no matter what. Uh, I doubt that this can happen. Secondly, when we take our action, should it come from a fear or should it come from a inclusion? When you're building any policy or doing anything, taking any step, doesn't it should come through the lens of inclusion rather than of fear? Shouldn't you understand, like, okay, you don't have any research or any data right now with you, but can't you uh like work on that direction? Like, what step you're taking? What you're doing is right now is you're excluding a whole population from a one way of livelihood, from one way of of being themselves, of doing things they love, they want, and as like any other athlete, a trans mm, a trans woman is not like the person can compete against any athlete because they born as a man. They have to put hours of training. They have to work on their diet and everything, sacrifice many things. And even in a structures in a country like India, where you read lot of news where a young trans people are committing suicide because of being bullied. This is the harsh reality of our country. And in this country, you are excluding the whole population from participating in sports. And it's one very unfair to me. And why this onus of proving things is on a trans woman or a trans folks? Shouldn't it be on a people who are excluding it? Shouldn't they find a justification of okay, like a way of uh, like a supporting everyone? Why everything is on a trans woman? Okay, now you have to prove yourself. Now you have to prove that you are not physically as strong as a woman. Now you have to do that. Why the body who are established to do it, they are not taking any action? So my and again, I'm a feminist. I'm a big advocate of women rights, their inclusion, uh, I am big time support of all this is women, uh, and it's very unfortunate to see there are some people who are creating this fear. Not, as I said in my opening note, they're not building a bridge. They're just keeping a wall. Okay, you are different. You are different. So when we see that, okay, you are a trans woman, but not in sports. You're trans women everywhere, and we accept you're women. we accept you. But in sports, you're not a woman. So in a women category, you will not play. So I find it very uncomfortable to hear that and to see the action which is not towards building inclusion but towards creating a fear, taking action out of fear. And what about trans folks? What, like, yeah. So
Myra, you've
that's
beautifully
my
articulated, the discrimination that is inherent in this whole discussion, right? In the sense that effectively an entire category of human beings are excluded from playing sport by virtue of the fact that they have transitioned. And it's clear that there is it is painful for many trans women that they are unable. Their sense of helplessness, obviously, right? Because you feel the sense of discrimination uh, by virtue of being excluded, and it's very it's the pain is quite clear in your voice when you are bringing this aspect out. Fair enough. Um, Gaurav, any quick thoughts that you want to share before I want to kind of we have about 10 or 12 minutes to wrap up. So before we move to the final topic, is there anything that you want to kind of say in response to Myra's thoughts?
I hear her, and I think anyone. This is the whole premise that we started this conversation with. That this must be a teachable moment where we learn not through a lived experience, because we can't possibly understand that, but through the lived experience of colleagues and people we encounter, such as Myra. And I think the only response I would have is that the largest pushback, the most the staunchest, the most robust pushback has actually come from fellow female athletes for transgender athletes to participate in female sports. And that was the limited point that I was making, that if there is a growing dissonance in the female athlete community about the participation of transgender athletes in female sports, then those voices also deserve to be heard.
Fair enough. Okay. So, very quickly, I want to now sort of wind down our conversation, and thank you both for having made this a really interesting discussion. Uh, I mean, it seems to me that the future of uh, women's sport at where it stands as of now is sort of tending towards excluding or exclusion of trans women from most women's sports, because the minute you set the bar at transitioning pre-puberty, that effectively rules most trans women out of sports, right? And Sebastian Coe, the legendary runner, who is now the World Athletics Federation, has in the past made statements to the effect of saying that if he had to choose, then he would choose fairness over inclusion. His point being that he would always err on the side of protecting the cis women's category. And the another statement that he has made is biology trumps gender, right? So we have those in positions of power at different sports bodies who are very clear that at this point of time, inclusion is not something that is going to be on their minds. I think they're very, very clear about the fact that they want to protect the sport the way it is today, which is in favor of only cis women can compete with in the women's category. Um, I wanted to sort of just get both of your thoughts, final thoughts before we, take questions. Where do you see the future of, uh, women's sports, particularly from the perspective of, trans women competing with cis women? Is this the final word? Is this where we are today? Is that where you believe women's sport will be even 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line? I'm just asking both of you to sort of you know, look into sort of the crystal ball and do a little bit of crystal ball gazing and share with us where you see this 20 years from now or 15 years from now. And hopefully this webinar will be then pulled up 20 years later and they'll say Gaurav and Myra were very prophetic in what they said about women's sports. Yeah. So Myra, maybe we start with you and then we
Sure.
can move to Gaurav.
So, one thing, but you talked about fairness. Inclusion is only a fair thing to do. The only just thing to do. You can't be exclusive. You can't be exclusionary, and you can say, okay, I'm doing it out of fairness. So, and having said that, like future of sports, which I see it as a non-binary. I don't see as a men sports. I don't see it as a women's sports. Uh, there are other gender as well who do not identify as a men or as a women or even as a trans men or as a trans women. There are agender, there are pangender, there are so many genders. So as a society, we are evolving and we are exploding. So I see future of sports as a non-binary. What we are seeing today, I don't think so. This is sustainable and it's going to be there in the same structure like the way it is right now.
Wonderful, Myra. So the future is non-binary,
Can I
probably
just
gender fluid as well. Yeah, Gaurav. Yeah.
yeah, this is where I completely disagree with Myra. I think I think in the design and the structure of sport is such that it needs for it to be separated and structured along gender lines. I think male and female sports categories will continue to exist also for the very important reason that female sport right now is at its is in a golden phase, so to speak. You've had multiple years of female sports persons fighting for the rights of aspects such as equal prize money, such as equal sponsorship, such as equal visibility, and they are starting to win those battles. We've seen that in women's cricket, we've seen that in women's soccer, we are seeing that in Olympic sports, and we are starting to see that across the sporting spectrum. And I think the joy and the skills that you see in women's sport will be completely or to a large extent eviscerated, completely destroyed, I think, if you are going to make it an open category, where women will stand no chance of competing against men in many sports. There might be some that there will, but once that happens, I think the world of sport will be poorer for it. So I certainly disagree with Myra on that one aspect, that we see a genderless future for sport.
Well, what is your take on the future, Gaurav?
I think the future relies very much on how the science evolves, because of the nature of where the science is currently. The sporting bodies hearing from their athletes, as well as what the limited science is telling them, is making these decisions in the interest of protecting female sport. My sense is that till the science evolves to a point that transgender women win the battle to say that they retain no inherent advantages of male puberty and are able to compete in certain categories, and are able to compete in female sports as on a level playing field, and able to convince the sporting ecosystem of that. I think it'll be and I know Myra may not like hearing me say this, but I think it's going to be a long and arduous battle for transgender women on this particular front. It's a hard one, but I think from the inspirational examples of people like Myra in the past, I don't think battles are something that transgender women are afraid of.
Fair enough, Gaurav. All right. So, with that, we can, we are really almost out of time. So, I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes in case anybody has any questions for either of you. One question that I wanted to ask, and I see that there are quite a few people who are asking that question as well. Is is there is it possible to have a separate category within sport for trans people, right? So men, women, and trans people, either trans men, trans women, etc. Is that something that is within the realm of consideration? I appreciate fully that the universe of trans people at this point in time, as we speak, is a very small one, and therefore that category may not make sense. But Nevertheless, we have quite a few of our attendees who are asking the same question, right? Can we have a separate category? Would that not do away with the whole controversy once and for all? Myra, would you like to sort of respond to that first?
Sure. I don't think so. It's a very good idea. Seeing like next 5 years or 10 years to have a separate category for a transgender folks. Uh, we don't have a lot of population of transgender people. How you will form a cricket team of 11 people? It will be very difficult. And I, I I doubt that this can happen. And as I said, the way I see the sports going forward, for me, it's non-binary. It does not have any gender. People will compete on the basis of their strength, on the basis of their skill, and their area of interest.
Okay, fair enough. Myra continues to believe strongly in the future as she had articulated it previously. Gaurav, what about you?
And very quickly, I can fully agree with Myra on something. Now, this is something I fully agree with her on. I don't see a separate category coming in because one, the population, like she said, is very small at the moment, and I think that the very nature of sport. And if the question was asked from the lens of a separate category, so that we can visualize sporting competition in that way, I think investment of sports fans is very important. And unless they see a very high quality of performance skill on show, their investment in that category will be very limited, because like Myra said, the numbers are so small. So I don't think in the foreseeable future I see a separate category being a viable uh, option. Perhaps there may be one or two sports which see that there is a critical mass of trans athletes who wish to compete and are being excluded from female competition or male competition, and should form that category as an experiment. I'd like to see how that goes. My gut says, though, that at the moment it's a non-starter.
Fair enough. Okay, understood. I mean, I'm just thinking that, maybe one day we could have enough, if there are enough trans athletes, we could even have something on the lines of a trans Olympics, right? Where only trans athletes compete. And it is very possible that there may be a very high level of viewership and interest in something like that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it is somewhere far off in the future at this point of time. We have a question on Duti Chand. How will this ban affect the existing opportunities and experiences of non-trans female athletes? I guess cis women athletes, particularly those with naturally high testosterone levels. I think Duti Chand's case is a very interesting and unique one in that sense, right? She's a cis woman athlete, but with very high levels of testosterone, which really kind of puts her in a kind of a bracket of her own or a category of her own. Um, Although the ban was from a doping perspective, so the current ban that's on the previous ban that was on her for the high hyperandrogenism has been lifted by the CAS, the court, the body that governs sports based out of Lausanne, I think, right, in Switzerland. CAS has ruled in favor of Duti Chand, and she can compete in the 100 meters category, 100 or 200 meters category. Interesting thing is there seems to be a different yardstick for Caster Semenya, who is prohibited from participating in the 400, 800, 1500, but can participate in the sprints as well as in the sort of long distance endurance running. Is there is there some kind of a difference in different yardsticks at play here? I mean, it seems like uh, nobody's really quite sure of the way ahead in terms of what kind of it's probably because science doesn't have an answer or is not able to come up with something on its own or but yeah, sorry, I'm rambling on, but yeah, Gaurav, if you could take a stab at responding to this question on the ban affecting existing opportunities and experiences of cis women athletes with high testosterone levels.
I think Dhuti Chand is two separate issues. The case, like you were articulating, Antony, is about uh, the case that she took to CAS was something that she won, and she came out with flying colors in that case. I mean, she essentially challenged the argument that she wasn't fit to play to participate in the female category, and the ban that she's serving is for doping offense, which is which is not connected to the or not entirely connected to the earlier issue. And I think again, this has been a divisive issue, especially in the case because of Caster Semenya, who was a very successful South African athlete. She won 2 gold medals at the Olympic Games. She was absolutely destroying the competition, and the science, as it came to the International Athletics Federation, seemed to suggest that the high levels of testosterone in her body gave her an inherent advantage, especially over those distances, 400, 800, etc. And she made a very compelling argument, which I thought really resonated with me, Antony, where she actually said that the International Athletics Federation is actually asking me to take drugs, a body which is meant to actually promote a drug-free sport, but actually asking me to take drugs to suppress what naturally exists within me from birth. And I think this is a completely separate issue to the one that we have been talking about. Unfortunately, she hasn't won that argument, and she's not allowed to compete in those categories. But it does open up another conversation point. And I will say here that I don't want to speak too much at length about this, because this is a tricky issue which not all of us have a deep-rooted understanding of, because of the nature of the science involved here. But I would say that I did see her arguments, and I felt that she had this commanding personality and these very strong arguments that she took to its logical conclusion, and she's refused to take these suppressants. So I think she's standing her ground and is emerging as kind of a beacon for this fight.
No, that's actually, that is a very interesting argument that she's made, and you're right. It's a very compelling one, right? The sports body, which actually preaches no drugs and has anti-doping and anti-doping testing mechanisms in place, is actually telling an individual to take drugs to suppress what is naturally sort of present in her body. There is the irony of that is, I guess, not lost on anybody, but somewhat sad as well, in that sense that you have to take drugs to be able to compete. All right, so um, Myra, there's a question for you, and you're welcome. It's totally up to you if you want to respond or not. But the question goes as follows: as a feminist, Myra, do you think it's fair for trans women to hijack biological women's sports? That's the question as it is framed. Would you like to take it?
Uh, yeah, why not? So, no one is hijacking anything. There is enough opportunity for everyone, for all the women, for all the men, and hopefully for all my non-binary folks in future. So no one is taking anything, and has been like if you see development of any gender or any race, long before there was backlash against black people. There was the history teaches that like this thing will keep happening, and what we need to do, we need to stand together, and we have to keep walking towards the path of inclusion. So the world has enough for everyone's need, not for everyone's greed. That's what Gandhi said.
Fabulous. Well put, Myra. That's beautifully articulated. All right, I'll take one. There are lots of questions, but I think we are out of time, and I'm mindful of that. So I want to take one question slash comment here, which I think is very interesting. It goes as follows: if the main differential between men and women, especially in sports, is the difference in testosterone levels, of course, there are other differences, but let's say the primary difference is testosterone levels, can sports have categories based on testosterone levels? This could help any gender participate in any sport based on their individual testosterone levels. Sort of on the, I mean, this takes it to the future that Myra had articulated a while ago, where you could possibly see a world where You know, sort of like weightlifting, right? You have categories, or boxing, you have
Yeah.
categories under 50 kgs, 50 to 55, you know, lightweight, bantamweight, etc., etc. Could we have sports only on the basis, you know, compete with each other on the basis of testosterone levels? Gaurav is vigorously shaking his head. So his answer is quite obvious and clear. But Gaurav, if you want to,
Yeah, no,
uh,
no, Antony, I think we have to understand the fundamental premise of sport. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it is a joyful activity that fosters competition and encourages people to take each other on in, in a competitive sphere with certain classifications, male, female, weight categories, etc. I think that if you go into an overt sort of or into this sort of deep rooted segmentization based on testosterone levels, and this is where it is, these are the levels on a particular day, and then
it's sort of like a weight category, right, Gaurav?
yeah,
I
but
mean,
I feel like I think it's overcomplicating what is essentially a very simple human activity, which involves the idea of pitting one's skills against the other athlete on a level playing field, and that's all that sport really is. And I think that if we get into these sorts of complicated categorizations, perhaps there is a future for that, but I think it takes away, to my mind, maybe I'm a traditionalist, but it takes away, to my mind, the joy of sport.
all right, Gaurav, you're very clear about, you've articulated very well what you believe, you know, the future of sport looks like. Myra, do you want to sort of add to that comment, or you know, your position is also very clear and very well articulated. But if you'd like to add something to that comment, you have the last few seconds.
Sure, why not? Like, I think we should try different things, and I think that's how we will be able to walk in on the part of inclusion. Like what things will work, what don't work. We have to try few things. We have to reflect, and we have to change. So that's what I think, and whatever it takes.
Myra sort of continues to be the beacon of positivity and optimism. And I think we need a lot more of that in our world today, because that kind of positivity is going to inspire change in the future as well. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Myra. Gaurav, thank you very much. I think both of you really, you know, sort of came with such, uh, you know, such strong, arguments and points that you put forth really well. And really, this has been a fantastic, enriching debate. So, thank you both for joining and participating. It's been wonderful having you both on our webinar, and I look forward to, hopefully, I think we could maybe do a few more sessions in the future, maybe on similar lines. But this has been a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Antony, and thanks a lot, Gaurav. In this session, I have learned a lot, and I'm really grateful to both of you and the whole Rainmaker team for it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you so much, Antony, and Myra. It's an absolute pleasure to have met you and heard your voice, and just complete admiration for the lived experience that you've had, and the battles that you continue to fight. It's an inspiration to us all. Much to learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening in, joining in, asking questions, participating. Stay tuned. We'll have more such interesting conversations and webinars on such topics. Thanks again, Myra, Gaurav,
Thank you.
and see you both very soon. Thank you.